The media called Chan the king of Seoul, but as he stared at the diamond ring left on the empty kitchen counter, he realized he was just a beggar standing in a golden ruin. The flashbulbs in the Grand Hyatt ballroom were blinding, popping like distant gunfire. Chan, the CEO of Ryong Constructions and the unspoken head of the 7-star syndicate, smiled. It was a rare expression. On his arm wasn't his wife. It was Jiwoo. Jiwoo, his high school one that got away, laughed, tilting her head so her diamond earrings caught the light. You haven't changed, Chan. Still the king of the playground. And you're still the only one who dares to tease me, Chan replied, his voice low, dripping with a nostalgia that blinded him to the present. He felt powerful here, desired. 5 miles away, in a penthouse that felt more like a museum than a home, the air was suffocating. Naomi paced the floor of the nursery, her dark skin ashen with worry. In her arms, 5-year-old Zoe was burning, up. The thermometer read 40 degrees C. Zoe's breathing was ragged, a terrifying wet rattle in her tiny chest. Daddy! Zoe whimpered, her eyes half open, glassy and unfocused. Is Daddy home? Naomi's heart fractured. She grabbed her phone, dialing the number she knew by heart. Ring, ring, ring. In the ballroom, Chan felt the vibration against his ribs. He pulled the phone out. Wife flashed on the screen. Jiwoo glanced at it, her lip curling slightly. She calls every hour, doesn't she? Doesn't she know you're working? Chan frowned. He was working, cementing an alliance. But mostly he was enjoying the ego boost Jiwoo provided. Naomi was duty. Naomi was silence. Naomi was the woman who washed his blood-stained shirts without asking questions, but lately her silence felt like judgment. It's nothing, Chan said, declining the call. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Just domestic noise. He didn't know it was a scream for help. Naomi stared at the disconnected, screen. The rejection didn't make her angry, it made her cold. A terrifyingly calm resolve settled over her features. She wrapped Zoe in a thick blanket, grabbed her keys, and walked out the door. She didn't look back at the luxury that had become her prison. It was 3 a.m. when Chan stumbled through the front door of the penthouse. He smelled of expensive whiskey and the faint, cloying scent of Jiwoo's gardenia perfume. He felt invincible. The deal was closed, and Jiwoo had whispered promises that made his blood run hot, reminding him of a time before responsibilities, before the syndicate, before her. Naomi, he called out, loosening his tie. He expected the usual routine. Naomi emerging from the shadows of the living room, a glass of water in hand, eyes filled with that quiet, irritating concern. She would take his coat. She would ask if he ate. But tonight, the hallway echoed. Naomi, stop playing games. I'm tired, he grumbled, kicking off his shoes. Silence, not the silence of sleep, but the heavy, sterile silence of an abandoned building. A prickle of unease crawled up his spine. He walked to the master bedroom. The bed was made, pristine, tight, untouched. He frowned, his buzz fading instantly. He turned and strode down the hall to Zoe's room. Princess? He pushed the door open. The nightlight was off. The bed was empty. The crib was stripped of its sheets. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. He ran back to the living room, his breath coming in short, angry bursts. Naomi! He roared, the sound bouncing off the marble floors. Then he saw it. On the dark mahogany dining table, sitting under the singular beam of the chandelier, was a small pile of objects. He approached it slowly as if it were a bomb. It was his platinum black card, the keys to the Mercedes he had bought her, and right on top, gleaming accusingly, was her wedding ring. Next to it lay a single sheet of paper, the handwriting shaky, as if written in a hurry. I called you 3 times. Zoe couldn't breathe. You declined the call. You have always loved your history more than your family, Chan. So go back to it. We are no longer your burden. Chan picked up the ring. It felt impossibly heavy in his palm. He looked at his phone. 3 missed calls. The timestamp, 8:42 p.m. The realization hit him like a physical blow to the gut. He hadn't just missed dinner, he had missed the emergency. "Secretary Kim!" Chan screamed into his phone, his voice cracking. "Find them. Now!" Han didn't cry. Men like Chan didn't cry, they calculated. He stormed into the master bedroom, ripping open the walk-in closet. The sight confused him. The rows of designer gowns, Chanel, Dior, bespoke silk handbags he had ordered for her were all there. The jewelry box was unlocked, brimming with diamonds worth millions. She hadn't taken a single thing he had given her. "She's bluffing," Chan muttered, pouring a glass of whiskey with a shaking hand. He paced the room like a caged tiger. "She's a foreigner in Seoul. Where can she go? She doesn't speak the language fluently. She has no family here. She'll crawl back when the credit card gets declined." He paused. The credit card. It was sitting on the dining table. He checked his banking app. No withdrawals. Damn it! He hurled the crystal glass against the wall, shattering it into 1,000 glittering shards. His phone buzzed again. It was Ji-woo. "Chan, darling." Her voice purred through the speaker, sickly sweet. "You left your watch at the hotel. Also, I was thinking, since she's being so difficult, maybe I should come over. I can comfort you properly." For the first time in 20 years, Ji-woo's voice didn't sound like music. It sounded like a drill. "Not tonight," Chan snapped, hanging up before she could protest. He sat on the edge of the bed. It was cold. He reached for the pillow Naomi usually slept on. He brought it to his face, inhaling deeply. Faint traces of cocoa butter and vanilla, the scent of her skin, lingered. It was a smell he had ignored for years, finding it too simple compared to Ji-woo's expensive perfumes. Now, the absence of it made the room feel like a tomb. He looked at the floor. In the rush, Naomi had dropped something. He bent down and picked it up. It was a Polaroid photo from 5 years ago. Chan, Naomi, and a newborn Zoe. He was smiling in the photo, a genuine, unguarded smile he hadn't worn in years. On the back, written in marker, "The day I thought I had everything." His arrogance cracked. She didn't leave to punish him. She left because she had nothing left to stay for. "Found them." Secretary Kim's voice was tight. "Incheon General Hospital. Pediatric ward. It's the charity wing, sir." Chan didn't wait. He moved with the lethal grace of a predator, his entourage of black-suited bodyguards trailing him. He would storm that hospital, pay the bills, fire the incompetent doctors who let his daughter stay in a charity wing, and drag his family back to the palace where they belonged. But when he arrived, the Dragon of Seoul was stopped by a 5-foot-tall nurse. "You cannot go in," she said, blocking the ICU door. "Do you know who I am?" Chan snarled, reaching for his wallet. "I can buy this entire building and turn it into a parking lot." "I don't care if you are the president," the nurse whispered fiercely. "That little girl needs rest, not a gangster shouting at her door." Chan froze. The word gangster stung, but not as much as what he saw through the glass partition. Naomi was there. She was curled up on a hard plastic chair next to Zoe's bed, her head resting on the mattress. She looked exhausted, her hair messy, wearing the same clothes she left in. But she was holding Zoe's hand with a ferocity that terrified him. A young doctor walked in, a man with kind eyes and worn-out shoes. He placed a hand on Naomi's shoulder gently. She didn't flinch. She looked up and gave him a weak, grateful smile. It was a smile Chan hadn't earned in 3 years. He stood on the other side of the glass, his reflection superimposed over them like a ghost. He was wearing a $5,000 suit, yet he looked like the poorest man in the room. He couldn't go in. He couldn't shout. He was forced to stand in the dirty hallway watching a stranger comfort his wife because he had been too busy comforting his high school crush. For the first time, the glass didn't feel like a window. It felt like a mirror showing him exactly what he was, an outsider. Chan sat on the cold metal bench in the hallway, the hospital sounds humming around him like white noise. Secretary Kim approached, his face pale. He held a tablet and a small, worn leather notebook. "Sir," Kim's voice trembled. "We ran a diagnostic on your private phone. There is software installed, a mirroring app." Chan frowned. "Speak plainly." "It auto-diverts Mrs. Naomi's calls to the junk folder during specific hours, and it sends auto-replies." Kim swiped the screen. "Look." Chan stared at the text log. "Naomi, Zoe is asking for you." Chan's phone, auto-reply. "Stop bothering me. I'm with Ji-woo." "I never wrote that," Chan whispered, the blood draining from his face. "I was in a meeting." "It was installed 3 months ago," Kim said softly. "The day Ms. Ji-woo borrowed your phone to take a selfie." Chan felt sick. He grabbed the leather notebook Kim was holding. "And this?" "Nurse found it in Zoe's bag." Chan opened it. It was a log of lies he had been fed. "August 10th, Ji-woo came to the house. She told me Chan laughs at my accent with his friends. She said I am just a placeholder until the divorce." September 2nd. Zoe cried all night. Chan didn't come home. Ji-woo sent a picture of his coat on her hotel floor. Chan's hands shook. He remembered that night. He had stayed at the office. Ji-woo had stopped by, spilled coffee on his coat, and offered to take it to the cleaners. It was all a setup. He looked up, his vision blurring with a red-hot rage. He hadn't just neglected his wife. He had allowed his high school obsession to torture her in his own home. The door to the ICU creaked open. Naomi stepped out. She saw the notebook in his hand. She didn't look scared. She looked at him with eyes that were thousands of years old. "You read it?" she asked, her voice raspy. "Good. Now you know why I didn't fight for you, Chan. You were never mine to fight for." Chan stood up, his fists clenched so tight the knuckles turned white. "I will kill her," he hissed, turning toward the elevator. "I will tear Ji-woo apart." "Stop." Naomi's voice was soft, but cut through his rage like a blade. "Zoe doesn't need a murderer, Chan. She needs a father." "Can you be that? Or is that role too small for the dragon?" Chan stopped. The question humbled him. He turned back, his shoulders slumping. He nodded once. He followed Naomi into the room. Zoe was awake, her small face pale against the stark white sheets. When she saw him, her eyes didn't light up with joy. They widened with caution. That hesitation broke his heart more than any bullet could. "Daddy," she whispered, "are you staying, or do you have work?" Chan pulled a plastic chair close to the bed. He sat down, his expensive Italian suit awkwardly bunching up. On the bedside table, there was a basket of pears. He took a small fruit knife. "No work today, princess," Chan said, his voice thick. "I'm just here." He started to peel the pear. His hands, usually steady with a gun, trembled. He hacked at the skin clumsily. It was pathetic. The great Mafia boss couldn't even peel a fruit properly for his child. Naomi watched him from the corner. She didn't mock him. She saw the desperation in his movements. "Thinner?" she said softly, stepping forward. She didn't take the knife from him. She guided his hand. "Peel it in one long strip, like this." For a moment, her hand covered his. Her skin was warm, rough from work. His was cold. It was the first time they had touched in months. "I'm sorry," he whispered, staring at the pear, afraid to look at her. "I didn't know." "Ignorance is not an excuse, Chan," she replied, pulling her hand away. "But you are here now. Make it count." He finished peeling the fruit and handed a slice to Zoe. She took it, smiling weakly. For the first time in years, the room didn't feel cold. It felt like a beginning. The peace lasted exactly 2 hours. It was midnight when they exited the hospital. Chan carried a sleeping Zoe in his arms, wrapping her in his suit jacket. Naomi walked beside him, weary but no longer looking at him with hate. The night air was crisp, smelling of rain and asphalt. "My car is around the back," Chan said softly. "I'll take you to the safe house. The penthouse isn't safe until I deal with... He trailed off, unable to say Ji-woo's name without tasting bile. Chan, Naomi started, touching his arm. You don't have to... Screech. High beams. Blinded them. 3 black SUVs tore around the corner, boxing them in against the hospital wall. Doors flew open. Men in masks spilled out, holding steel pipes and knives. It wasn't a random mugging. It was a hit. The Vipers, Chan cursed. Get behind me. He handed Zoe to Naomi, pushing them into the alcove of the building. He stood in front of them, unbuttoning his cuffs. He had no gun. He had left it in the car to not scare Zoe. He was unarmed against 12 men. Well, well, a voice sneered from the lead car. Ji-woo wasn't lying. The dragon really has gone soft for his pet. Chan's eyes went cold. Ji-woo. She hadn't just sabotaged his marriage. She had sold his location to his enemies to get him killed, hoping to inherit his empire as the grieving fiancé. Touch them, Chan snarled, his voice low and demonic, and I will burn your entire lineage. They rushed him. Chan fought like a demon. He broke arms, shattered jaws, moving with a brutality born of desperation, but there were too many. A bat cracked against his ribs. A knife slashed his forearm. Chan! Naomi screamed. One attacker slipped past Chan, aiming a serrated blade at Naomi and Zoe. Chan didn't think. He didn't calculate. He turned his back on the mob and threw himself over his wife and child. Shunk. The blade buried itself deep into Chan's back, just below the shoulder blade. He grunted, a wet, guttural sound, but he didn't fall. He wrapped his arms tighter around them, locking them in a cage of his own flesh. I've got you, he gasped into Naomi's ear, blood dripping from his mouth onto her shoulder. I've got you. Sirens wailed in the distance. The attackers fled, but the Dragon of Seoul didn't rise. He slid down the wall, his eyes fixing on Naomi's face as the world went dark. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor was the first thing Chan heard. Beep, beep, beep. He opened his eyes. The pain in his back was a dull, throbbing fire, but his mind was clear. He was alive. He turned his head. Naomi was sitting in the armchair, staring out the window. The morning sun bathed her profile in gold. She looked regal, tired, and impossibly beautiful. She wasn't crying. She was waiting. You're awake, she said, not turning around. Her voice was neutral. Did the police get Ji-woo? Chan croaked, his throat like sandpaper. Secretary Kim handled it, Naomi said, finally turning to face him. She was arrested at the airport trying to flee the country. Fraud? Conspiracy to commit murder? She won't be coming back, Chan. Chan closed his eyes. The ghost was gone, but the wreckage remained. Kim, Chan whispered. Secretary Kim stepped out from the shadows of the room. Sir? Give me the file. Kim hesitated, then handed Chan a manila folder. Chan's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were the divorce papers Naomi had left on the table in Act 2. Chan uncapped a pen. He didn't hesitate. He signed his name on the dotted line. The scratch of the pen sounded like a scream in the quiet room. He held the folder out to Naomi. Take it, Chan said, his voice breaking. Naomi stared at the folder, then at his eyes. What are you doing? I am setting you free, Chan whispered. Tears finally spilled over his lashes. You were right, Naomi. I am dangerous. I am chaos. You and Zoe, you deserve sunlight. I am just the shadow that blocks it. He placed the papers on the bed sheet between them. Take Zoe. Go back to Nigeria or Europe or wherever you want. I will transfer half my assets to you. You will never see me again. He looked away, unable to bear the sight of her leaving him, even though he was the one sending her away. This was his penance. He loved her too much to keep her in his hell. The room was silent, save for the sound of Chan's ragged breathing. He waited for the sound of the door closing, the sound of her leaving him forever. Instead, he heard a sharp, distinct "Ryip!" Chan's eyes snapped open. Naomi stood there. The divorce. Papers torn in half in her hands. She let the pieces flutter to the floor like snow. "You don't get to decide for me, Chan," she said, her voice steady and commanding. She walked to the bed, her eyes blazing not with anger, but with a fierce determination. "You don't get to decide what I deserve. I didn't leave because you were dangerous. I left because you were absent." She reached into her pocket. Chan's breath hitched. She pulled out the platinum wedding band, the one she had left on the dining table under the cold chandelier. "The man who chased high school ghosts? I divorced him the moment I walked out that door," Naomi said, holding the ring up to the sunlight. "But the man who peeled a pear with shaking hands? The man who used his own body as a shield for his daughter? That is a man I can build a life with." She took his hand, the rough, scarred hand of a killer, and placed the ring back on his finger. It slid on perfectly. "But this time," she whispered, leaning close, her forehead resting against his, "there are no shadows, no secrets. You are not the dragon in this house. You are just Chan." Chan brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles, weeping openly now. "Just Chan," he vowed. "I promise." The door creaked open. Zoe peeked in, holding a drawing. It was a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. The daddy stick figure had a superhero cape. "Daddy, are you okay?" Chan smiled, a real smile, one that reached his eyes. He waved her over. As his daughter climbed onto the bed and his wife sat beside him, the cold, empty penthouse felt like a distant nightmare. He had lost his ego, but he had found his home.